Welcome to Solving the Retirement Puzzle, putting together the pieces of an ideal retirement plan. The four main takeaways that we would like to give you this evening are as we want you to consider the timing of Social Security, market volatility, taxes, and inflation. The media and news articles, and I'll call it generic financial planning, have rules of thumbs for all of these areas. And we found, probably 80% of the time, maybe even more, um, it doesn't matter. And those rules of thumb, they work. But if you're in that 15 to 20% of the time, you just retired and the market goes down, or you listen to a video, you're 62, the videos say, hey, you're in a family that's lived a long time, start taking money at 62. But you might have a large amount of, after tax assets that you could spend down and take a higher Social Security income further down the line. And that might, allow you to save a lot of money in taxes and other things. So our goal is when we finish with this seminar, you'll get a sense of how all these factors need to be considered and analyzed to give you the most relaxing retirement and a feeling that you can spend the money that you've saved all these years. And then when you pass away, there'll be money for the next generation or some of, the entities that are very important to you. My name is Michael Wright. I have 35 years of business and financial services experience. I've been able to help people grow their assets and most importantly, to keep them secure for living comfortably and leaving a legacy to future generations. 23 of those years were in financial planning, investment advice, and in the insurance areas. I was a certified financial planner for 10 years. I left the industry about 11 years ago, so I could spend more time with my family. But in the meantime, I helped small businesses obtain capital so that they could overcome cash hurdles, so they could scale and grow, their largest asset. And then in January of this year, I opened an independent registered advisory firm registered through the state of Indiana. The reason I did that is because in the last 2 or 3 years, I've received a lot of friends and family asking for second opinions on their financial plans. They all have advisors, good CPAs, accountants, CFPs, but we kept finding gaps in the planning. Either estate plans, the documents were drawn up, but things weren't retitled, or even retirement plans where I'm talking about the rules of thumbs earlier, where that basically came into play, and they needed better analysis to help them in retirement. So here I am back to being an independent advisor. I can help each family how we see fit on a fee basis. So the reason we're all here, retiring looks a lot different today than it used to. We're first going to start talking about Social Security. Social Security Act was signed in law by President Roosevelt in 1935, in addition to several provisions for general welfare. The new act created a social insurance program designed to pay retired workers age 65 or older, so they'd have continuing income after retirement. In 1940, the first retirement check was paid to Ida Mae Fuller of Ludlow, Vermont. It was $22.54. She worked for 3 years under the Social Security program, accumulated taxes on her salary. And then it was a total of $24.75. Her initial check for $22.54. And then during her lifetime, she collected $22,800 almost $23,000 in Social Security benefits. Chart details her covered wages. So here's the key Social Security basics, including the filing ages and benefit percentages. You can file as early as age 62 for reduced benefit, or you can delay them to age 70 for increased payment. It also outlines wage tax limits and average benefits along with cost of living that helps you keep pace. So basically, when can you file? 62, you get 75% of your benefits. For most of us, age 66, 67, you get 100%. And then at age 70, you get 132% of your base Social Security wage. The cost of living adjustment is basically the CPI every year, and then it has to go through the government. So in 2026, it was 2.8%. The maximum wage where they'll take out Social Security taxes in 2025 was $176,100, and the maximum you can get from your Social Security wages are $4,152. The average benefit is $3,200. In 2015, there was a bipartisan budget act. It temporarily relocated Social Security payroll taxes to the Disability Insurance Trust Fund, and this delayed its projected reserve depletion beyond 2016 into the early 2020s. DI exhaustion is no longer projected within the 75-year window. Retirement funds, a different story. Hopefully they'll address that, but I think we have about 7 more years before that's a problem. Why planning is so important. And this is just 3 different examples of Ron and Nancy. If you Ron's 60, Nancy's 58. They start benefits at 62. They'll have $1.9 million would be their cumulative value of benefits if they live to life expectancy. If they start benefits at the full amount at age 67, they'll have 2.3 million in benefits. And if they can hold off to age 70, they'll accumulate, and they live to age 85 and 90, they would have $2.5 million in benefits. So that's a substantial, that's $600,000 roughly to consider when you take your income from Social Security. The key to this, there's many keys. Like I mentioned in the opening, we could, if you have, after-tax accounts, it might make more sense to spend those down and wait to take Social Security. If you're, if you're working part-time, it just depends on, your wages and things like that. If you want to do Roth conversions, it might make sense to convert your traditional IRAs to Roths and then kick in Social Security. So, we have a very good program where we can show you like the different options of, hey, if you work until this time, or if we take money out of these accounts first, these accounts second, how to either maximize the Social Security or maximize your assets. Because Social Security is just one component of your retirement income. So it may make sense to take it at 62, might make sense to take it at 70 or 68 or some other age. Taxes and inflation in retirement. This chart illustrates the dramatic rise in debt, U.S. government debt. It's now $38.4 trillion. 1970 is 371 billion. And you can see between 2015 and 2022, it took a big jump. And that just kind of kept on that projection, which I mean, most of that was probably from COVID. The 10-year Treasury yields, as you can see, with the increase in debt, and I'm not saying it's correlated, um, but from 2020, 2021, and that was mainly, the COVID crisis. After that cleaned up, which rates are probably too low, and then they just kept spiking as inflation and debt has increased. The Secure Act 2.0 had some big changes. The RMD age increased from 70 and a half to 73, and then eventually it'll move to 75. The stretch IRA was eliminated. So now non-spouse beneficiaries, they have to follow a 10-year rule. You used to be able to stretch it out over their lifetimes. There's no age limit on IRA contributions. As long as you have earned income, you can put your money into an IRA. They expanded automatic enrollment, so new employer plans require auto enrollment, and you have greater access to annuities and qualified retirement plans. So basically, that allows people to have lifetime income options. I think we'll get into it later, but because in the last three or four market corrections, bonds have not really been the buffer that they have been in the past. Required minimum distributions. They start at age 73 under the Secure Act 2.0. So if you have a after tax, or I mean, if you have a pre-tax IRA or 401k, at age 73, you'll be required to take 3.77% a year out of those accounts so that the government can get their taxes out of them. You can withdraw more than that, but you don't have to. If you do not withdraw the 3.77%, and you probably know this, but all the trustees that handle your IRA, they do these calculations for you. But the penalty now, if you don't take out your full amount, is 25%. Previously, it was 10%. So it's important to forecast your RMDs when modeling retirement income, especially for the tax planning. Where experts think tax rates are going, lower or higher? And generally, everybody said they were going higher. But with the big, beautiful bill, they basically locked in tax brackets from the previous Trump bill. So now your tax brackets are 10, 12, 22, 24, 32, 35, and 37. Standard deductions went up to 15,750 for an individual, 31,500 for joint filers. You get a bonus deduction if you're 65 and older. And this is only good for 3 years. That's not permanent, but for the next 3 years, you get an additional deduction if you're 65. Charitable deductions are also now they're available to non-itemizers. So this provides an opportunity to potentially reduce your taxes through thoughtful planning, such as Roth conversions. So understanding qualified counts. There's $13 trillion in employer-sponsored defined contribution plans. 9.3 trillion are held in 401k plans. So basically, employees are left to do it alone. There are limited investment options, and really, anymore, there are very few safe options. Pretty much every plan used to have, a guaranteed option, and now most of them just have a bond fund, which, those can go down during, I think it was 2020. I mean, bonds went down 20% when stocks were going down. So it wasn't any buffer at all. So get to know and understand your 401k because the investments and the investment performance falls on you. So what are your options? You could do nothing and you can continue to defer and pay unknown taxes later. You can pay taxes now. So you have known rates versus unknown rates. And three, here's the tax efficient planning options. Doesn't mean you should do these, but it's things to consider. Contribute to a Roth IRA. Convert traditional IRAs to Roth IRAs. Take advantage of living benefit plans and look at tax code section 7702. That's basically the benefits of life insurance. Roth conversions. Here's the tax policy considerations after the one big, beautiful bill. You can hedge against future tax policy changes. Federal tax rates remain subject to congressional action, so conversions can help reduce exposure to potential future tax increases or rule changes. You have known rates versus unknown future rates. So conversions allow taxes to be paid at today's known rates, providing flexibility if future tax policy becomes less favorable. Income and deduction interaction. Because conversions increase your taxable income, they may reduce or eliminate certain deductions, credits, or benefits. So planning the timing out and the size of your conversions is critical. And then the interaction with Social Security and Medicare. Roth withdrawals are tax-free and excluded from Social Security taxation, but Roth conversions can increase your provisional income and your Medicare surcharges in the year of conversion. So my suggestion here, much like we suggested having your Social Security, having a thorough analysis done of when you should take Social Security, and even if you have the analysis done now, if your life changes, you want to work longer, things like that, you can have it updated, but at least you have a plan. Um, with Roth conversions, we find, especially with the new tax rates, that some of the rule of thumb information, like, a lot of advisors and accountants say only convert up to, your next bracket. Um, that depends on the individual. Sometimes it makes sense to pay higher income tax bracket right now, especially if it might get you, more Social Security benefits later, or again, with the deficits and things like that, who really knows when politically, um, it's going to be popular to raise federal income taxes, and you'd be a lot better off, having the ability to take tax-free money out of your Roth than having a traditional IRA. Tax advantage life insurance. This is 7702. And again, I'm not selling life insurance, but here's the benefits. So if you have an old policy with cash values, sometimes people, when they retire, they just cash them out. Um, if you have old cash value policies, there's some that they're much better dividend advantage than other plans. If you have a universal life, and you probably don't know what you have, but this is an opportunity to find out what you have. Universal life policies, you can't really see it unless you're really reading your policy. Those rates go up the older you get. So if you're 60, the cost of those go up rapidly between like 60 and 90. So you want to know if you have cash value in a life insurance policy, find out what you have and have that analyzed, because life insurance, if you have cash value, you can get that money out in a very well tax advantage way. So anyway, um, life, section 7702, contributions grow tax deferred, gains are locked in annually. It's 100% principal protected from market loss for the life of the contract. Critical and long-term care benefits, provides tax-free retirement income if it's done correctly, um, and no IRS age restrictions or contribution limits. I'm going to go back to the tax-free retirement income. Technically, you can take out what you put in, and then after that, most life insurance policies have a very advantageous way of loaning money out of your policy where you get it tax-free. But you need to have a plan on that, because if for some reason your policy lapses, it's all going to become taxable. Inflation. Based on different inflation rates, how frequently will your income need to double to maintain your standard of living? How long until $50,000 will need to be $100,000? So let's say you retire next year. If we have a 6% average inflation rate, which we had a few years ago, I don't expect this, but you never know. It's a crazy world. Um, you would need, in 12 years, you're going to need $100,000 out of your portfolio to make the same amount, the same as $50,000. So, and I'm still, I'd say 3.5 to 4%. So you probably have 18 to 24 years before you're going to have to take out twice as much out of your portfolio. But it's a big consideration. So better planning for retirement income. Roth conversions remain attractive if you're in a lower bracket. If you own a business and you started that business, now, this sounds really good, but you can get 100% of your capital gains excluded if you sell that business. I believe that's up to like $75 million. This is somewhat sounds really good. And in reality, most people have LLCs. But if you have a C Corp and you founded that company, um, have someone take a look at that. And because, if you sell it, you might be able to get, depending on how big your business is, if you're doing 5 million a year in revenues and you get three times that, I believe all that would be tax-free income. Opportunity zone investments um, were restructured to favor rural areas up to 30% tax reduction. There's also Trump accounts. The tax deferred savings accounts for children are useful as legacy vehicles. Investors and business owners have new tools, but only if they act while the rules are favorable. Inflation, the hidden tax. In 2005, loaf of bread was 48 cents. It's $1.83 last year. Ground beef, and again, this isn't generic inflation, but 261.05, 652 in 2025. So is your current plan tax efficient? Does it factor in inflation? You need to make sure it does. Market talk. Oh boy, huh? These are all the major bear markets. Bear markets are usually a drawdown of 20% or more. And as you'll see, I mean, for a while there, we had we didn't have very much um, volatility in the markets. But since 2020, so in the last 6 years, we've had three markets go down 20% or more. So, and this is why it's important getting back to even. If you lose 10% and you're getting a 6% return, you need almost 2 years to get that back. If you lose 20% in a bear market, you need 3.8 years. Now, if you can get 8%, I mean, it's still 3 years, which is quite a bit. So, the new math for retirees, if you start with $100,000 and the market goes down 10%, you're left with $90,000. You need to gain 11.1% before you're back to break even. So consider that if you're withdrawing money, it makes it a lot worse. So, and again, when I go to like rule of thumbs, like a lot of advisors, it's like, hey, we show you 4% coming out over a long period of time and it's an average. Well, there's a big difference between I retired and the market went down. We sent some bombs to Iran, market goes down, and I retired this month and I'm withdrawing from my retirement account. Um, if you take out, if you have $100,000 and the market goes down 20%, you have $80,000, you're going to need 25% return to get back to even. And especially in retirement, we usually, usually the investments get a little more conservative. So you're gonna have to figure out a way. If you get drawn down hard, you're gonna figure out a way to be more aggressive to get most of that back. So did this have to happen? So basically, we have the three phases. We have a preservation phase, a death zone, distribution, and accumulation. Rate of return versus yield. You have $500,000 in investment. Highlights that yield or actual income generated can be more meaningful measure of investment performance and average return, especially in retirement. As you can see, you have start with $500,000 year one, it goes up 50. Year two, it goes down 50. Year three, it goes up 30. You're negative. Yeah. So you average a 10% return over 3 years, but your value is $487,500. So never ask your advisor or your broker what my average rate of return is. Ask, what is my yield? Sequence of returns. And we call it sequential risk. So here's the S&P 500 from 2001 to 2024. It averaged 5.9%. This family took 50,000 per year out of their S&P 500 account and averaged 5.9%. They started with, as you can see, by 2024. So 23 years later, so you're 23 years in retirement, your account value is down to $341,000. That doesn't feel very secure. So if you reverse that, same average rate of return, 5.9%, withdrawing 50,000 per year. Over those 23 years at the end, just reversing the ups and downs, you have $1.7 million. So you're feeling pretty good about that. So just this is a side by side. Start with a million. 2024. If the timing was bad, 341,000. And reverse $1.7 million. So you need to plan for this and have a lot of different allocations. So get your retirement income plan reviewed. Problems with retiring today? If those weren't enough, we'll go over longevity risk. A 65-year-old can expect to live another 19 to 21 years on average. A third of 65-year-olds will reach age 90. 1/7 will live beyond the age of 95. My two grandmothers, not that it matters, lived to 100 and 104. So they needed a lot of, guaranteed fixed income. The average American lives in retirement for 18 years, but retirement could last 20 to 30 years or more. Creates a risk of running out of money. There are fewer defined benefit plans. So with less defined benefit plans, more defined contribution plans, the income sources are changing. You have retirement savings, you have 401ks and IRAs. You still have Social Security benefits. There are some pension plans left, but there aren't very many. And basically, a pension plan is just an annuity. We also have rising healthcare costs with the growing population, aging seniors, um, the disease prevalence, increased utilization of healthcare, more specialization. Roughly 70% of 65 plus individuals will need some long-term care services in their lifetime. And the average nursing home stay is 835 days. So, what should you expect from your financial professional? They understand your needs, which basically the only way you do that is to ask, your advisor asks you a lot of questions on what's important to you and what you want to do in retirement. They always put your best interests first. People throw around the word fiduciary. We're a fiduciary. Every CFP is a fiduciary. Most advisors are fiduciaries, but there's still quite a few that they're going to put their company products, what their company might be getting a free trip or whatever, any of that type of stuff. If they have products that they're selling, it's I'm not saying, I mean, I used to sell products and I'd still put my client's interests first. But trust me, it makes you think. If you have a very nice trip on the line, um, and it almost looks the same, what are you going to do? But um, but most people live under the golden rule. Client education, so seminars like this, but with your advisor, um, do they have different um, webinars and things like that where you can go to get educated, or even when you call in, do do they help you understand how to make a decision on your plan? Make sure you have a written retirement plan. Communication, periodic reviews are more important now than ever, as all those boxes. Market volatility, social security, when to take that in and out, because like the people I'm working with, I have a few, they know when they kind of want to retire. They should have money for it. But if they can work an extra couple of years, they'll probably do it. And we just adjust everything. So taking the next steps, schedule a complimentary review. You can do that with us. Get a customized Social Security report. We'll do that with you if you would like. Get a tax efficient plan. And that is basically, um, I used to do this on spreadsheets, but, we have a very good interactive software. And, we do plans for people and then you come back in. So, you don't see us typing in all your data. But with our new planning software that we use, if we're in a meeting, we can put on a screen and show you, hey, if I have these five IRAs. What if I convert these two and we wait on these? What's the tax ramifications and the amount of money I have, at age 70 compared to, if I take Social Security at 67 and don't do Roth conversions. So we can, even if we lay out, hey, here's what we think your best plan is, because that's usually what people pay us for. You might see that and you're still like, well, I told them this, but my boss is leaving, so I'm gonna stay longer. We can move these things around a lot to help, dial in the best situation for you. Get a comprehensive retirement income plan review. This all inflation, markets, Social Security, taxes, it all fits together because, I get the feeling that, you know, we want to be able to have fun retirement, spend our money without worrying about it, but we may never, have enough money to not worry. So I just want to say thank you. Um, it's been a privilege to speak tonight. I'm gonna hop into the question and answer period right now. If you have any questions, let's get started.